Our guest is Alexa Carlin. The book is Adaptable. And we have a lot to ask you about, but I have to tell you, like when I got the info for your book, you had me at the very first sentence, which was at 21 years old, Alexa Carlin was medically induced into a coma and given a
Mhm.
1% chance to live. I have never met anybody in my entire life named Alexa. No, I've never met anybody in my entire life um, who's been in a coma. Okay, before we get to your book and the life-changing aspect of it, you got to really tell us about that. Like, what happened? Why were you in a coma? What was it like being in a coma? Did you hear about Kim and Kanye later? Like, tell me everything.
Yeah, that was a really different experience. And it's kind of crazy because the things that I visualized while I was in the coma or experienced or saw, whatever you want to believe, um, are more realistic than the reality I'm living today. So I was induced into a medical coma out of nowhere. Bacteria got in my bloodstream and sent my body into septic shock. And the doctors told my mom, call your family. She has 24 hours to live. And for 6 days, I was in the coma and they gave me a 1% chance. And during this time, I remember I experienced so many different like visions and experiences. I don't even know what to call them, but one that I really vividly remember was I was running on this big open field of green grass. And let me tell you that this green does not exist in this reality because the best way that I can describe it was that the colors were alive. So they were like
Wow.
breathing in a way. Like it was so vibrant, so beautiful. And I was running in this open field of green grass, and all around me were these orange mountains, like orange rocks. And I remember that I felt so much at peace. And I was just running with the wind, but I wasn't in a body. I was this spirit. I was this being of light. And I was just like so much at peace. I never felt afraid until I woke up out of the coma. Then
Hmm.
I was in the ICU. I didn't know what was going on. And that's when I experienced real fear. Um, but I never felt at any moment that I was like going on like to a different side or whatever, different stories we've heard. But I do feel like I was at a place where I felt at that next level, super, super connected with the universe, with God, whatever you believe in, that higher power of like just so much serenity though, like just this being of light.
So was it like a dream or was it different than a dream?
It was way different than a dream. This is a dream. When I dream, like I'll remember it and then you forget it after a little bit of time. This was so much like an experience. And let me tell you a crazy story actually, where a few months after this near death experience, I actually went on a trip with my mom. I was in college when this happened. And then, and it was January 26, 2013, when I was induced into the coma. I was in a coma 6 days, ICU for a total of 10. It took me months to heal my body, get my lung capacity back. And but actually March, so a few months after that, was spring break. And usually, like, when you're senior in college, you're going on spring break with everyone, but I
Right.
was still not healthy enough. And my mom's like, I heard this very spiritual place called Sedona, Arizona. Let's
Mm-hmm.
go there. And so me and my mom went on this trip to Sedona, and we had a friend take us up the energy vortex of Bell Rock. And then we had lunch in between where Bell Rock and Cathedral Rock. And for anyone that's listening doesn't know an energy vortex, it's basically like the healthiest part of the earth. That's like
Okay.
best way to explain it. Like if we're all healthy right now, you may be healthier than I am. So that's an easy way to explain what an energy vortex is. But anyway, I was having lunch and I looked around and I was in this big field of green grass with orange mountains all around me.
No.
And I never knew that Sedona existed. I've never seen like pictures of it. And it was like overwhelming this feeling of this reality coming true.
I have chills now. You just gave me such chills. Okay, I don't even know you and that freaked me out. You experienced this. Did that freak you out? Like in that moment when you looked around, were you like, hey, hang on a minute?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm like freaked out right now. I was more like, wow, I'm powerful. No.
Right. No, of course. Why wouldn't you listen, you beat death. So
it was very much like the power of the mindset. Like I've always believed in positive thinking, law of attraction, all that stuff. But the experiences that I had through this near-death experience and continue to have through challenges with my autoimmune disease, through everyday life, and there's so much power in mindset shifts and really focusing on your thoughts. Because going back to this experience in the ICU, when I woke up out of that coma, I had a mask on my face, tube down my throat, hooked up to 9 different bags of antibiotics. So I couldn't move, breathe, or speak on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what was going on, but I did have my thoughts and I did have my mind.
Right.
And I remember being in so much physical pain, like so much pain. And then you're hearing all the machines, the nurses coming in and out, the doctors talking. And I just like was like, I don't know how I'm going to last another day, let alone another hour, because I'm in physical pain. And all I wanted was a glass of water, but I couldn't have a glass of water because I had this tube down my throat and I was on a ventilator still. And I remember I was like, okay, I need to do something. And I didn't know what sepsis was. I didn't know that it was actually destroying all of my organs in my body. But I remember visualizing my mind to be this pure, healthy pink. And the rest of my body was black and rotting away. And with every ounce of energy I had left, I would push down this healthy pink color to the rest of my body to try and heal it. And I never read this in a book. I never learned about this. It was just intuitively all I had control over.
Right.
And that is kind of one of the main lessons in my book, Adaptable, is that you have to focus on the things that you do have control over. And as we've seen, like we don't have control over most things, yet we give so much of our energy to it. And it depletes our energy from focusing on all the things that will help us move the needle forward or pursue the life we desire or live a happier life. And so this was, I mean, it took me a long time to learn this lesson, but it all came from really understanding, like, you have to focus on the things you do have control over. And all I had were my thoughts at this time.
What was the threshold? Like at what moment were they like, okay, a minute ago it was 1%. Now hang on, she's going to live. Like, what was that moment? What was the medical thing that happened to you? What were they waiting for? Was there a certain, like if she wakes up from this coma or if she breathes on her own, or like, what was it?
That's a good question. So I don't know, like I'm in the sense of like, I wasn't there, but from what my mom has shared with me, they were testing all like the bacteria in all these different like buckets to see like, I guess, antibiotics that would fix, like to stop the spread.
Like
a
House.
lot of what?
Like House.
Like TV show House. They were testing
yes, exactly. So like sepsis, sepsis kills 1 in 3 people.
Jeez.
And a lot of people don't realize like sepsis is a lot of times the killer. They talk about pneumonia, they talk about different things, but it ends up being sepsis. And my body was in shock from it. And so they were testing all of these different, I guess antibiotics to help stop it. A lot of people get their legs or arms amputated to stop it. I'm lucky that didn't happen to me. But my mom remembers that she saw like all these doctors surrounding me when they told like my family to get out of the room. And again, I was in a coma, so I was not aware of any of this, but she remembers seeing the doctors shaking their head like, no. And I was actually in the pediatric ICU because I was in college and at the University of Florida. And they actually, even though I was 21, they put me in the pediatric part of the hospital. And she remembers hearing a doctor saying, such a shame. And at that time, my mom, me and my mom are like best friends. So she went in an area, like when you're in the intensive
I'm sorry.
care,
I was just thinking like people usually look at me and shake their heads and say, what, just a shame. Anyway, just like as on the normal course of my life. I was thinking like, yeah, that sounds very familiar. I was like, oh, right. You were in the coma. So they probably, they probably meant medically. Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, medically. My mom tried to find like a place where she could just go and like cry in a way, because you have to be
Right.
very quiet on the floor, and she didn't want to leave the floor. And she said she like went behind like the Coke machine, like the vending machine. She doesn't know why, but
Right.
she like went down and like on and pulled her legs closer to her, like, in that huddle, like fetal position. And she was just crying and praying and just saying like, please don't take my baby away from me. And again, she's shared this story with me. Um, and this is kind of crazy. This is not in my book, maybe in a future book, but she remembers feeling uh, a person's hand on her shoulder. And she looked up, and it was this older gentleman in overalls. And this is in the ICU.
Mhm.
Okay.
And he just said, everything's going to be okay. And when you're in the intensive care, I don't know if anyone listening has ever been, you see the same people because it's like intense, stuff happening. They're there for a longer period of time. So she knew basically everyone on the floor, and she never saw him before this, never saw him after this.
No.
And at that, in the next coming hours, something just switched. Like they don't really
Wow.
know the cause of the bacteria. It could have been from undetected flu, even though I got the flu shot. Could have been from undetected UTI. It could have been from something sitting dormant in my system. They never could figure it out. And all of a sudden, something switched, and one of the antibiotics started helping.
Wow.
Her angel wears overalls. That's the coolest thing ever. I love that.
And he's an old guy.
He's an old guy, like in a movie. That's this. You have to make a movie about this.
Hmm.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Oh my God. That sounds incredible. And so was your mom, were either one of you like religious or spiritual before this? Or was this the kind of thing that you were like, huh, there might be something to all this spirituality people talk about all the time?
Yeah, I mean, we're not very religious at all. We've always been like more spiritual. I like to learn about all the different religions and ways of life, and kind of take what resonates and leave the rest. But
Hmm.
we were never that big into any type of specific faith. But we've always believed in, like, I believe in the universe, higher power, all that stuff. But it was kind of just like, wow, and there's been a number of stories that have happened. And there's some in the book, like regarding a $5 bill presenting itself to me, and how that aligns with so many synchronicities of
Hmm.
that, relating to something happening that's bigger than ourselves.
Right.
And I think for everyone, if you notice the signs, like if you're present, if you're aware, if you believe that life is happening for you and not to you, you can
Hmm.
you can really discover that. I believe everything happens for a reason, but you have to be curious enough to go out and find what that reason is.
Wait, I gotta take that in for a second. Life is happening for you, not to you. That's brilliant. I never thought of it like that. That's such, regardless, coma or no, that sounds like the kind of person you are. Because when I look at your history, like you were already a CEO at 17, like you've had this extraordinary life that it's almost like, of course, that you had 1% chance to live and you lived. Like, I just feel like you've always been one of those people that has lived this extraordinary life.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, definitely I've always been very purpose driven, and always felt like I'm meant to do something bigger
Hmm.
and make a difference. And so, yes, I've started my first business at 17, was, growing my dreams from an early age, and always had a mission to make a difference in at least one person's life a day. I'm a huge believer in the power of one and the power of the ripple effect of the individual. But this experience, and then the onset of my autoimmune disease after this traumatic event, has been a huge change in my entire life, because now I had to learn how to adapt to
Hmm.
all the things that I can't control, to all the things I can't change. Because there was a long time where I was a victim to circumstance, a victim to what happened to me, a victim to this autoimmune, chronic, debilitating illness I have to live with day in and day out. And I think a lot of us, like, it's easy to be a victim to circumstance. And I don't think everything is your fault, but I do believe that you have a choice to adapt to all of those challenges, to all the things that you can't control, and still continue on the path that you deserve and that you desire.
Wow.
Wow, too deep.
No, it's beautiful. It's a lot to take in. Certainly for Anthony, his brain's very small.
Yeah, very small. And I just go back to if you didn't go through this, would you be on the same path that you are on now? Or did this lead you down that path?
That's a really good question. I don't know where I would be if I would still have found something that made me pivot to where I'm at today. But before this experience, I was very set on working in the fashion industry. So even after my near-death experience, I graduated college, moved to New York City, got my dream job working at InStyle magazine. And that's always what I wanted to pursue. Since really high school, just like, and through entrepreneurship, but in the fashion industry. And because of this experience, I was too sick to live in New York City, and I had to move home to back with my parents to gain their support. But at the same time, I also felt like I was meant to do something different and use this story to help inspire people. And I just felt like, again, I had to figure out why this happened for me versus staying in that victim mindset. Cause I was a victim to my autoimmune for years. I mean, there was a good 8 months where I couldn't even leave my apartment to walk my dog. I was so sick. And it's like, I was 22, 23 now. And I'm like, I'm so young. I can't live the rest of my life like this. And so that led me to public speaking and to what I'm doing today as the founder of Women in Power X.
But COVID must have been a game changer for you also, because having an autoimmune disease, you're probably like, oh, for fuck's sake, like what now?
Now I can't go anywhere. Come on.
Thanks, COVID.
I know. I was already quarantined in my house for so many years. And then all of a sudden I'm healthy, healthier, growing my business, taking it to the next level. I was hosting our first event on the West Coast in LA, attracting 2,000 to 3,000 people, finally getting the bigger sponsors, and bam, here comes COVID. And my entire business is wiped out because I was public speaking and hosting giant conferences. So outside of like brand equity and my reputation, I had to start over from scratch. But it also led me to this publishing deal. It led me to writing Adaptable. It led me to pivoting towards the online educational world. And still, I'm a big believer that if you're committed to your purpose versus the path, you'll stay passionate, you'll stay hungry, you'll stay on the pursuit towards what you're meant to do.
Yeah.
But like even early on in COVID, I was like pivoting and trying to put a Band-Aid on the situation, which I think a lot of us were trying to do, thinking it was going to be shorter than it was. And every time I like listened to others, like, oh, you should do this, you should do that, started getting burnt out and lost my passion. I was like, again, victim to COVID now, stealing my dreams.
Right.
But when I wrote at a moment, like during this time last year, I wrote something down that like triggered a different way to go about it. So a story, which is a chapter in the book, but it's called, you're writing your non-negotiables list. So when I was in the dating world, I was dating and I just hated the dating game because like, I'm very focused. Like I just want to hang out with my friends and family or do my work, not like go and date people that I don't have a future with. And I just couldn't figure out if I liked the person or not. Cause I was like, oh, I make myself laugh. So I don't know that, laughing is always a good sign. So anyway, one of my best friends told me, Alexa, you got to write your non-negotiable list. And it was basically like, what's a must-have for the person you want to spend your life with versus a nice to have. And it led me
this
to
all
my
sounds very
fiance.
familiar, by the way.
What?
This all sounds very familiar to me. Yeah, well, I'll tell you, finish what you're saying, and then I'll explain to you why this is all very familiar.
Okay. So that led me to my now fiance. But then during COVID, I was like, why don't we do that for our career or for our business, for the thing that we spend the majority of our time doing? So I decided to write my non-negotiables when it came to my business list. And I wrote like a list of 10 to 15 items, and it had to do with like values or the lifestyle I want. For example, like it has to be rooted on collaboration over competition. I would have to be able to use my voice to share my story. I has to give me the freedom, which is very important when you have health challenges, to work, when you need to, if you can't work. And so I wrote down this list, and I realized like nowhere on this list does it say in-person events or in-person speaking gigs.
Right.
And that's when I realized like there's a million ways to achieve my purpose and my dreams. Events was just the path I was on. And I'm a big believer, like you can't ever give up on the first try, because there's always a way. You just have to find it. And that's how I
Is that
pivoted.
one of your business non-negotiables? Don't give up on the first try.
What'd you say?
Is that one of your business non-negotiables? Don't give up on the first try, because that's really good.
Yeah, it's like one of my values for sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the chapters in the book is Plan Q, and it shows like goes through the alphabet, and like each time I've had Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. Right now I'm on Plan Q. And that's okay.
I love that. So the reason why it's familiar, so I wrote a best-selling book called Been There, Done That, Kept the Jewelry. And the book was exactly that. It was your non-negotiable dating. And it was your must-have list, your wouldn't it be nice if list. So you had different things in the book. And the idea was that like your list was individual to you. Like I can't tell you what your must-haves should be.
That's awesome.
Because like, for example, like I talk about like one of the girls I interviewed in the book, for her, she had dated a series of men who were alcoholics. I would never put on my list, must not be an alcoholic, because I've never dated an alcoholic in my life. But for her, that's a must not be an alcoholic. That's a definite must. And then the next is, wouldn't it be nice if he had a cat or a dog, like something that it's not going to make or break your relationship, but, be nice if he showed up in the relationship with a pet, you know what I mean? Like stupid stuff that you don't really care about. But, as you were saying that, I was thinking like, this is all very familiar, but I love the idea that you took the concept of the must-haves and applied it to business, because I think there's a lot of women out there that everyone, when they talk, even today, I feel like feminism has come so far, but then when it comes to relationship stuff and business stuff, there's just this glass ceiling that we still have not completely broken through, where when people talk to women, they ask, so who are you dating? What's your relationship status? Are you married?
How many kids do you have? When
How
you
many
gonna have
kids do you have? Exactly. That kind of stuff. We had interviewed, I'm going to drop a name and I really apologize. This is so obnoxious, but we had interviewed Lady Gaga right after we interviewed Bruno Mars. And what I noticed in the interviews—
It's not obnoxious. I mean, you should totally talk about that.
No. Well, here's why. Because I noticed that Lady Gaga, when we had interviewed her, had just turned like 30. And everybody was saying, so when you having babies? And Bruno Mars had also just turned 30. Nobody asked him when he's having babies. Nobody.
Wow.
And that's what I'm talking about. It's like, so your accomplishments are sort of reduced to your uterus when you're a woman, like still to this day, like it's like we live in this totally woke culture, but that is one thing that is still, it's like a microaggression and it's still kind of there.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Right. So
definitely,
I love,
yeah, I just turned 30. Yeah. And so going through the same questions, and it's just crazy because before I was engaged, I just recently got engaged for a year. It will be 1 year in December. And I was doing all of these things, yet I still felt like I wasn't that accomplished because I didn't have someone. And now like everyone's asking the next step, right? When are you going to have babies, or when are you getting married, or all these different things? And it's just, I wrote in my book that the world needs a big shift. And I don't, we celebrate engagements, weddings, baby showers so big, and they do call for a celebration, but why don't we celebrate just as big, like a woman getting a promotion or starting her own business? And we just slide that under the table But I think it calls
Exactly.
for an equal celebration, if not more.
Right. I want to start my own business and I want you to show up with gifts. I want shower gifts for my, and I want the exact same. And you know what? I made the choice very young to never have kids. Like that was just never on my plans. So I'm never going to have all those things that you're talking about in terms of like the baby shower and all the, the push gift and all that stuff and the whatever. Right. So I think you're right. I think we should start that right now. I mean, this is
Yeah.
a $1 million idea.
Business shower gifts. Yeah. I think so.
Exactly.
I mean, I would show
Success
up.
shit. Yeah, success
Yeah.
gifts, success parties.
So when somebody finishes your book, reading your book, what's the one thing you want them to take away from it?
Oh, good question. I would say the one thing would be an overarching feeling of rediscovering the hope within, that regardless of the challenges, the obstacles, the odds stacked against them, that they can adapt and achieve what they want in life. And I say that because for a long time I lost all hope. And every time I would go see like a spiritual leader or a New York Times bestselling author at a conference or a speaker or read a book or watch a YouTube video, everyone talks about like, have hope, just have hope and everything will be okay. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't have hope because there's no cure for my autoimmune disease and I have to live with this for the rest of my life. So where's the hope? Because everybody always spoke on a similar pattern. They spoke on tragedy that they went through in their past, right? Childhood abuse or homelessness or alcohol, troubles or relationship, but then how they overcame it. And then they provide the steps how you can do that too. And that's transformational for someone that's trying to overcome something in their past. But when it comes to mental health or deep loss that is really part of your heart, or like me, a chronic illness, like you're never going to overcome that. And why should you spend your whole life trying to overcome something? There's always obstacles coming our way. So instead, you try to turn that obstacle into an opportunity. But during this time, I couldn't find any hope. And so what I did, it took me a long time to figure this out, but what I did was I exchanged hope with curiosity. And I became so curious to what may happen if I don't give up, if I wake up one more day, if I try one more time. And that all comes from within. And for so many years, I was searching for the light at the end of the tunnel until I finally realized the light was within me all along. And so after you read Adaptable, I hope that each reader finds that light within them.
She is Alexa Carlin. The book is Adaptable. You can get it on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, anywhere where you buy books. And you should pick up a copy right now because it is super inspiring. And if that interview with her didn't teach you anything about you, then you absolutely need to get a copy of Adaptable right now and start learning about yourself.
Thank you so much.